If Carter Starocci does come back for that fifth NCAA season, would he work better at 174, 184, or 197? Plus, is there an unexpected name that would be considered a starter that could end up taking a red shirt for this upcoming season?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So now it's looking like Carter Starocci is going to come back for that fifth NCAA season, even though it's not a guarantee. And then Penn State's going to have to move some puzzle pieces around. And could there be a surprise name that might not be in the lineup? We're talking champion caliber name. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko. And thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. The voice of Penn State wrestling is back. That is Jeff Byers. He is also the morning show host of Fox Sports 98.7 in-state college. If you're out of the area, you can stream it at 987thefox.com. Jeff, I was very eager to catch up with you just because Carter Starocci gave that interview. And then the lineup construction gets a little more interesting here. We'll begin with Carter Starocci, go to that surprise wrestler, and then Terrell Barraclough entering the transfer portal. Carter Starocci indicated that he has a 60-40% chance of actually returning to Penn State. Now he's going to meet with Cale Sanderson, I imagine, maybe for a week or so now that, the U.S. Olympic trials are over. But it's not going to be at 174. It's going to be maybe at 184, maybe even 197. Jeff, if Carter does come back, do you prefer him more? Does he fit better into the lineup at 184 or 197? From my point of view, I think 197 makes a lot of sense, but as the voice of Penn State wrestling, what say you?
Yeah, I actually think he'll end up at 174 where he's been.
Okay.
And I think that's the best spot for him. I think even with his Olympic dreams, which I think will involve, probably going at 74 kilos, which I think is a good spot for him. I think it makes the most sense. I guess I could see him maybe going up to 184, but I think 174 is the right spot for him. I can't really see him going all the way up to 197 with what he wants to do in freestyle and with what Penn State has in its lineup. And truthfully, I think 174 just seems like the natural spot for him. I think 184, is likely going to be Josh Barr next year. And then, they've got some things that they have to figure out here for sure. But if he does go up to 184, I think then they've got to figure out exactly how to resolve some of these issues with some of the other guys that are chomping at the bit to get in the lineup.
What is the case, I guess, against 184 or 197 aside from lineup construction? Because the impression that I had, I thought 197 made a lot of sense here, Jeff, because Carter Starocci bumped essentially all the way up from 174 to 189 with that 86 kilo weight class, right? And I don't want to say it was overwhelming, but there was definitely like, hey, he's not used to being here alongside of not being 100% officially. If he's at 174, does that mean that he would try to go back down to 74 kilos on the Olympic or the international freestyle circuit?
Yeah, and I think that's more his, kind of where he fits in. When he's healthy, I think he's very tough to beat there, and I think that's just more of a natural fit. Although 79 kilos, next year, 79 kilos probably would make the most sense. I mean, that probably would be where he goes in the World Championship years. And then, he's going to have to figure out whether he can bulk up enough. He's just not, I think going up is going to be, either one's going to be a challenge, obviously. Going up, I think with his frame, I think is going to be challenging. obviously getting down to 74 kilos, especially with the bum knee, was a huge pull. I think the 79 spot feels like, and listen, hopefully maybe somehow they figure out in the next 4 years how to do the right thing here with the Olympics and get back to 10 weight classes. And he doesn't have to worry about this. And he goes at 79 kilos in the Olympics too. That's what should happen. That, this cutting down to 6 weight classes never should have happened. And that's part of the reason why, Zach, is you saw, a guy like Carter Starocci, 74 is too big of a pull. 86 is just too much of a weight class for him. It's why you have the 10 weight classes, and that's what wrestling is designed for. And you're making guys, too many guys try to fit into spots that they don't really fit.
So from Carter's point of view, this was just a one-off decision rather than a sign of things to come, where it would be David Taylor, Aaron Brooks, Carter Starocci, kind of all clustered from the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club into the same weight class when it came to international competitions.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club is going to be like that for the foreseeable future.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have a bunch of guys going at the same weight class, and that's just the nature of the beast. And as we saw with the Olympic trials, it is a very tough situation. There's a lot of very bittersweet moments, I think, for the fans, the coaches, and probably even the wrestlers alike.
And then the final part of this, okay, so when I have him in my mind projected at 197, it just makes a lot of sense given what you have in terms of, freshman talent coming in. There's going to be, a vacancy with Aaron Brooks. Alex Facundo comes back. He returns. He was the 165-pounder. And then that would mean he's going to be the 174-pounder naturally, but then Carter Starocci is coming back. He's not coming back, right? It's not a guarantee. What does this do to displace Alex Facundo? Does that mean that there's now a competition between him and Mitchell Messenbrink? Does that mean, and again, that's why we're having the upcoming segment here to try to figure it out, but does this complicate things with Facundo returning from his Olympic red shirt?
Well, the entire lineup is complicated because of the infusion of talent that they have. But yes, I mean, Facundo is one of the many that are going to be impacted here, and I think that they, it's very uncertain, and I think it's one of the conversation pieces probably that Kale and the coaching staff are going to have with Carter in terms of this upcoming season. Is if he does come back, how do they handle that situation? And again, certainly don't blame Carter for wanting to come back. Certainly makes a lot of sense from Penn State's standpoint to have him back, but this is why, again, I think the NCAA just got it wrong when it comes to the extra year of eligibility. There's a natural cycle of things. And this isn't certainly the first or the only situation. There's been a ton of them in just about every wrestling room in the country where guys that should be starting their careers are having to delay a year or have to hit the transfer portal to get what they want out of their collegiate experience because that natural cycle got disrupted pretty significantly here. Hopefully this will be the last year of it. I think if I'm doing the math right, we'll finally be done with it after the 2025 NCAAs.
So that surprise wrestler with Penn State going through this lineup construction, somebody's got to be removed from the starting lineup for better or for worse. Well, in this case, that surprise wrestler is a recent NCAA champion. We're going to discuss that on the other side of this break. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Are you getting hyped for the NBA playoffs? I know I am. Picture yourself at a live NBA game with that playoff atmosphere. Well, those dreams can become a reality with Gametime as they make it happen as the NBA's authorized ticket marketplace. And get this, prices will actually drop on Gametime as the game approaches tip-off. Now, I've used the Gametime app for myself for Penn State games, baseball games, and more. And you can too for those playoff matchups and get some pretty sweet deals. You'll get last-minute ticket deals, but you don't have to second-guess yourself when you're buying the tickets. Gametime offers seat views so you know where you'll be sitting and what that point of view looks like. Gametime's got it all, plus they have the lowest price guarantee. with last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, and more, Solid Ticket coverage will give you that peace of mind with every purchase on Gametime. So are you ready to snag those playoff tickets? All you got to do is download the Gametime app, sign up, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create that account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is the place to bet on each and every game. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That is right, $150. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. We saw the Timberwolves move on, the Nuggets advance, and you can bet on those game lines, those series lines right now on FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Jeff, let's just jump right back into it because, teasing this idea, it's speculation, but when you start to think about it, it makes a little bit of sense. That surprise wrestler could be Levi Haynes. Now, this was posed by Pat Minio, of course, very people follow him for his wrestling content, his point of view, his analysis. So people might recognize him. But Jeff, Tyler Kasak, Braden Davis obviously makes sense as possible red shirts down the road. However, Levi Haynes is as a recent NCAA champion, a former NCAA runner-up in just 2 years' time, but gets really introduced with the Olympic trials to the freestyle circuit here with what we've debated about who could wrestle at 157, 165 with Mitchell Messenbrink and Levi Haynes. Alex Facundo comes back. This is where Levi Haynes, maybe he takes that red shirt and begins to compete a little more and focus on the freestyle circuit. What is the likelihood that this could happen? It's odd because, again, he just won it. You're taking an NCAA champion out of the lineup. It is odd. It is taboo. But because Penn State has so much to work with, they can obviously overcome a movement like this.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, I think a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that the coaches and the wrestlers and their families have to figure out. And yeah, I think that, I don't know what the likelihood or the percentage chance is, but
it is a possibility, though.
Well, for sure. I mean, partly because I don't know this with certainty, but I think Levi will have a very difficult time trying to cut back to 57 again. I'm not sure I see that as a viable option. Now, maybe I'm misreading it, but I mean, it was a big cut for him this year. I think he's still growing, and I just think 57 is not in the cards. And so then you have a situation where, could Mitchell Messenbrink drop down to 57 and they switch spots in the lineup? That would seem like a possibility, but I don't know that Mitchell is real keen on the idea of cutting weight. It would not be a huge cut for him. I think it's a much bigger cut for Levi to get down to 57. But if Mitchell doesn't want to cut and he can win the spot, and I don't know who would win right now between those two. Obviously, it'd be a very, very competitive match and two great wrestlers. But listen, you've got a bunch of guys that are coming in here too that are going to be trying to figure out where they fit in the lineup. Tyler Kasak obviously has a red shirt available to him. Could he go up to 57? I think based on what we saw with him at 49 last year, that probably is at least a possibility here if they're looking to move some things around. So, there's a lot of moving parts here that I don't know if the coaches necessarily even have an answer. To a large degree, Cal leaves those decisions up to the wrestlers. Now, there may be situations here and there where the coaches say, you do realize this is the situation, and perhaps it would be in your best interest to, either bulk up and make the move up to try to get a spot in the lineup, or to cut and to try to make the weight drop in some cases. So yeah, it's an unusual situation for sure that Penn State has up and down the lineup. Again, you've got just an unbelievable team returning. And then when you look at the incoming and you just look at the results of the recent U.S. Open, what Penn State has coming in, I mean, this arguably is the best recruiting class yet for Cale Sanderson that's coming in here. And between these next 2 years and the guys coming in, again, there's just not enough spots in the lineup. There are going to be some elite wrestlers that simply can't get in the lineup. Now, can they do some things with red shirts and with some of the guys that are coming in, maybe gray shirting opportunities? Sure, all of that is possible, but there is definitely going to be some situations where you have very high caliber, high credentialed wrestlers that just there's not a spot in the lineup for.
And it's not because they're not good enough or they're getting cut in a sense. It's just, there's no tag in, tag out, right? You have, this constant cycle in football and basketball where guys can provide you minutes off the bench. The depth is simply for injury or, again, kind of your career decisions. When Penn State has, the starting lineup gets a little complicated when it comes to wrestling, and there are only 10 spots. There's not, okay, after 4 minutes, hey, tag in, the backup's coming in. Right? You go out there and you either wrestle within that 6 minutes or you don't. So it's not a matter of, Levi Haynes isn't good enough to be a 157 or couldn't beat out a Mitchell Messenbrink. It's just when you start to think about it, and you mentioned that he would have to make that weight cut still, that's just going to be difficult going into a third year. We saw him compete at the Olympic trials, and he showed out very well. I mean, remember, and Levi Haynes is a younger wrestler. A lot of these wrestlers kind of come in maybe a year or two older than their actual age group, if you will. Like there's high school wrestlers that are 17, 18 years old when they're sophomores and juniors in high school, right? Levi Haynes is a true 19 years old going to be 20, and he's going to be a true junior. In some instances, a lot of wrestlers are typically 21 turning 22. So Levi Haynes is actually on the younger side of this. But there is just such a traffic jam, Jeff, at 157, 165, 174, if and when Carter does come back, that's 60-40 chance. Mitchell Messenbrink being a mainstay now, and he's already taken that red shirt. And then you have guys like that you mentioned. Joe Seeley performed very well. Zach Ryder obviously won the championship at 79 kilos. So those guys will definitely factor in at some point in the future here. But don't worry if Levi Haynes has to be, decide ultimately ends up taking the red shirt, being that surprise wrestler rather than somebody else, just because of the options that Penn State has.
Yeah, again, it's from a fan's perspective, I think it'll be fun and interesting to see how it all plays out. And, I'm not, I know some fans are getting caught up on, this guy's going to beat this guy. You don't know. I mean, you really don't. None of us do, including the coaches. There's just sometimes it's a style matchup. Sometimes it's just one guy develops a little faster or a little better. And, this isn't completely unique. I mean, we've had in the history of the sport, we've had national champions return and not be able to make the starting lineup. Somebody comes in and beats them out. It's been very rare. But Iowa, at least had it happen once. I mean, it's not unprecedented. And I'm not making any predictions there, so don't read anything into that. I'm not saying that any of the starters this last year for Penn State, champions or not, won't be able to make the lineup. I'm just saying you don't know how this is going to play out. And part of it is, and this is one of the difficulties of wrestling, is you're trying to project as best you can, right, as coaches, when you're recruiting. Yes. Hey, we think this guy is going to fit here. We think this guy is going to fit there. Well, sometimes they jump a couple of weight classes. They're not holding the weight that you were projecting them at. They just grow, and there's no way they can do it. And, I've talked about this before, but it is one of the difficulties, I think, more so in wrestling than any other sport. I mean, in most sports, like in volleyball, you're recruiting somebody to be an outside hitter or a setter. Well, they don't grow into one or the other. Like, they might not be as good as you thought they were, or might turn out to be better than you thought when you were recruiting them, but the position, generally speaking. You'll have some changes here or there in football and that sort of thing. But in wrestling, again, sometimes you're like, I think this guy's a 33-pounder, finishes up his career as a 49 or 57-pounder. And with 9.9 scholarships, right, that can be a big challenge, because if you have a couple of guys that you had penciled in at a certain weight, and then all of a sudden that weight's empty. And that's why, to me, the depth that Penn State has been able to accumulate is one of the more astounding things we've seen in this sport. And certainly when you look at the room that is going to be there next year, it's unbelievable that you can have a room with that much talent. Again, I think it is unlikely that all of these guys are going to be finishing up their careers at Penn State, just because, again, they're too talented to sit on the bench for multiple years. But with 10 weight classes, and again, when you look at some of the middle and upper weights, there's just, you have more than 5 or 6 guys there that are elite right now, and that projected, even 49 up through heavyweight right now.
And the transfer portal exists, or at least it exists now in present college athletics. And in the final segment, we're going to discuss just that, because Terrell Barraclough was the first to enter his name from the Penn State wrestling room. Could more be on the way? We'll discuss that on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff to tell you about in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers that you can trade with a friend to complete albums for bigger prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis when you want to taunt your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting each and every day. It's not the same old game. It's constantly changing with tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win and rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, get back in the game, and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Penn State wrestling veteran, somebody who's poured his blood, sweat, and tears into the program, a heart and soul type of teammate, Terrell Barraclough, is in the transfer portal, and maybe some other fellow Penn State wrestlers could be behind him just because of that natural attrition, as Jeff mentioned in the previous segment. If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Let us know down in the comments what you think about Penn State's wrestling lineup going into the 24-25 lineup. And of course, you can listen to Jeff every morning, 8 to 10 a.m. live on Fox Sports Radio, 98.7 FM in State College, 987thefox.com if you are, in fact, out of the area. Terrell Barraclough does enter his name. Jeff, let's begin with this before we actually talk about Terrell Barraclough, the wrestler, and the impact he had, even though he wasn't necessarily a starter, but he's very talented and will definitely compete at whatever weight class, 65 or 74, when he moves on. But we'll get to that in just a second. As you said, more names could enter just because there's so many talented wrestlers that could compete right now in the moment. Penn State, everyone says this, Penn State's backups, the second string wrestlers in Penn State's would-be lineup, could go out and compete for national titles if you constructed them in a different school, if that was the case here. So are you anticipating that more names could be out the door, whether they're surprised or not? And I'm not asking you to make predictions, but maybe is there another, couple or few? What's the likelihood that there's going to be a small or large amount of wrestlers from Penn State in the portal?
Yeah, I don't think there will be many this year. I think most of the guys they have are thinking they can be the starter right now. I think it's more likely you'll see in terms of underclassmen. Now, Terrell's, I guess
he's a grad.
Yeah, I'll separate to me, like Bernie Truax coming in last year, he fulfilled his obligation to Cal Poly. It wasn't to me, that's just a different situation when you have a grad guy. And Terrell obviously has given everything he has to the Penn State program, is looking at it, sees that it is very unlikely at the very least that he would be a starter next year, and wants that opportunity to go out and showcase his skills and see if he can get on the podium or, maybe even win a national title there in his final go around. So completely understand. And a guy like David Evans might fall into that category too. I have no idea if David is even considering it. So I'm not putting anything out there. I haven't talked to him and I'm not aware of anything, but a guy like that, again, who is very good, has put his time in here, is graduating, all of that, and then wants the opportunity. That to me makes a ton of sense. And I don't think anybody anywhere begrudges somebody that opportunity. There are some guys that I don't think are going to hit the transfer portal, but who you're really kind of looking, and we talked about Alex Facundo earlier. Listen, Alex Facundo could end up being a 3-time national champion. Like, he is that talented and that type of good. What I don't know is, again, how this is going to play out. On one hand, it's almost impossible for me to envision Alex Facundo not being in the starting lineup here, if not this year, certainly in the years after that for Penn State. At the same time, I'm also, again, I'm looking at Carter Starocci if he returns. I'm looking at Zach Ryder. I'm looking at Josh Barr, the Mirasolas, and it's just a really, and I can't see any of those guys. Again, somebody out of that group, at least one somebody, is not going to be a starter here either of the next 2 years. And if I read off those names one by one, you're like, well, no, that's obviously a starter. That could be a national champion. Yeah, I and you're right in every case. But again, there's only 4 spots there from 74 through heavyweight, and really, 3 spots, 74 through 97. And that's not even counting, like, a guy like Lucas Cochran is coming on. And I think with the year of experience he has, I mean, there's a bunch of other guys that could be in the mix there as well. Again, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out in terms of this year's transfer portal. Again, maybe I'll be surprised, but I don't think you're going to see, you might see 1 or 2 others, but I don't think you're going to see any guys that you would project as likely or probable starters, at least hitting the transfer portal now. Now, this time next year, that could change substantially, again, depending on how things play out here in the upcoming season.
And the transfer portal for college wrestling is open until mid-May, so there is some time to make some decisions here. And Penn State could lose some wrestlers. They could also get some out of the portal if they do see a fit again, like Bernie Truax just recently. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like and share this episode, and you can keep up with Jeff outside of wrestling on his radio station, Fox Sports 98.7 in State College, 987thefox.com. You can stream him. Jeff, thanks so much for the time, as always.
Thanks, Zach.
Once again, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. And don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app.